4 shots. 4 bodies. 8 seconds. And then silence. The entire forward base froze stunned as the quiet girl from the medical tent lowered a rifle that no one believed she could even hold. The desert sun caught strands of her golden curls, glinting like fire, while her black eyes, cold, focused, unblinking, scanned the horizon for more threats. For months, she had been the medic girl. The one who scrubbed stretchers, counted morphine vials, and kept to herself. No one paid her much attention, except to laugh. But now, in the blistering heat, with smoke curling in the distance and gunfire still echoing faintly in the mountains, she had revealed something none of them expected. Her name was Sophia Moretti, and 12 hours earlier, she was nothing more than a ghost in the background of their war. The morning heat at Forward Operating Base Ember pressed down like a weight, wrapping the dusty outpost in a suffocating embrace. The air was thick with a sharp stench of diesel cordite and the faint metallic tang of old blood that never quite washed away. Inside the medical tent, a canvas sanctuary stretched thin between life and death, Sophia moved with quiet grace. Her presence was almost ethereal in that chaos. She was 26, too young, many thought, to be hardened by war, and too delicate to survive it. Her blonde curls framed a face that belonged in a fashion magazine, not in a battlefield carved into the Afghan desert. Her pale skin had picked up a faint tan from months under the sun, but she still looked porcelain against the hardened soldiers who stumbled in and out of the tent. The oversized scrubs hung loose on her petite frame. Her boots seemed too big, scuffing softly against the dirt floor as she bent over crates of medical supplies. Her hands, delicate fingers that others thought better suited for pianos or bouquets, moved with clockwork precision. She counted under her breath, her voice musical, almost poetic. 20 units, 47 ampoules, 12 emergency doses. The cadence was hypnotic, like she'd done this 1,000 times before. And maybe she had. From the tent entrance, Sergeant John Garrison leaned against the canvas wall, arms folded, jaw clenched with the arrogance of someone still proving himself. At 28, he had the build and posture of a recruiting poster. Broad shoulders, buzz-cut, square jaw. But in his eyes lingered the insecurity of a man who wore rank like borrowed clothes. He smirked. Loud enough for everyone to hear, he said. Look at her. Probably never broke a nail in her life, let alone saved anyone. The tent rippled with low laughter. Corporal Robert Fletcher, always eager to echo his superiors, added with a grin, "My little sister's tougher than this one. She looks like she should be arranging flowers, not patching up soldiers." Private Michael Torres, the youngest of the group, only 21 and desperate to prove himself, smirked as well. "Bet she cries at Disney movies. What's she gonna do when the blood's real?" The laughter grew. Sophia didn't flinch, didn't even glance their way. Her hands continued their steady work, her soft voice counting, as if the cruelty hadn't touched her at all. But for a brief second, her black eyes lifted, and in that fleeting look, something sharp and dangerous glinted. Something no one else noticed. She went back to work, silent, controlled, and somehow, her silence was more unnerving than any reply could have been. Around the base, she was a mystery. To most soldiers, Sophia Moretti was just a civilian medic, a nobody. Her curls bounced when she walked. Her voice was too gentle, her boots too clean. They whispered nicknames, Princess, Goldilocks, Doll. It was easy to dismiss her. But not everyone was convinced. Private Ethan Novak, just 19, watched her more carefully than the others. He saw the little things, the way she lifted heavy crates without strain, the way she identified incoming helicopters by sound before anyone else even looked up, the rough calluses on her palms that didn't belong to a fragile medic. "There's something different about her," he whispered one night to his bunkmate. "The way she looks at things, like she sees more than we do." His bunkmate laughed. "You've got a crush, Novak. That's all." But Novak wasn't imagining it. Then there was Nora Reeves, a 32-year-old combat medic with 3 tours under her belt. She had seen enough to know when someone didn't belong. And Sophia, she didn't belong. Nora watched her quietly, How does she know exactly what altitude meds to give Henderson when he gets migraines? She muttered to Derek Hayes, the portly doctor who never stopped reminding everyone of his degree. That wasn't basic training. That was advanced dosing protocol. Hayes snorted. Lucky guess. These volunteers watch medical shows and think they're geniuses. Don't read into it. But Nora kept watching. She noticed Sophia always kept her back to the wall, always knew where the exits were, always seemed to place herself near anything that could double as a weapon. She moved like a shadow, graceful but tactical. The jokes grew crueler with time. Soldiers bowed in mock curtsies when she passed. Some put on falsetto voices when imitating her. The nickname Goldilocks spread like wildfire. She bore it all with silence. And yet there were moments when her mask slipped, just enough for someone paying attention to catch a glimpse of the steel beneath the porcelain. Novak saw it. Reeves saw it. But the others? They laughed. Until the sirens. It was a Tuesday. The heat shimmered, and life at the base felt routine. Then came the mechanical scream, the emergency sirens. A supply convoy had hit an IED. Casualties incoming. The medical tent exploded into chaos. Stretchers were readied. Supplies scattered. Hands trembled. Sophia stood by the wall, quiet, her black eyes sharper now, watching, waiting. When the first stretcher burst through the tent flaps, Private Novak lay upon it, his leg shredded, blood pooling beneath him. The lead medic, Hayes, went pale. His voice broke as he shouted, "Clamps! Get me clamps! Someone call for a surgeon." His hands shook. The others scrambled. Novak's pulse was failing. Blood poured too fast. And that's when Sophia moved. She stepped forward, smooth, certain, every motion economical, like a dancer gliding into position. Her voice, calm, quiet, commanding, cut through the panic. "Step aside." And for the first time, everyone obeyed. What Sophia did in the next 4 minutes would change everything the soldiers thought they knew about her. But the question lingered. Who exactly was the girl they'd been mocking? Have you ever underestimated someone, only to be shocked by what they were truly capable of? Share your story in the comments. The tent was chaos. Blood pooled beneath Novak's stretcher, seeping through the canvas and soaking into the dirt floor. The young private's skin had turned pale, lips trembling as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Medic Derek Hayes barked useless orders, his face blotched red, his hands trembling as he fumbled with clamps he couldn't find. "Where are the damn instruments?" "He's bleeding out." The air buzzed with panic, voices overlapping, footsteps slamming against the floorboards, the metallic clatter of tools dropped in haste. Sophia stepped forward, and it was as if time slowed. Her curls caught the dim light, her black eyes sharp and steady. She placed one hand lightly on Hayes' shoulder and spoke. Her voice was soft but unyielding. "Step aside." Something in her tone froze him. The chatter died. Even the tent seemed to hold its breath. Sophia leaned over Novak, her fingers pressed against the wound, finding the severed artery with terrifying precision. Her movements were not those of a civilian medic fumbling through first aid. No, this was surgical mastery. "Novak," she whispered, her voice smooth, melodic. "Stay with me. Breathe. You're not leaving here today. Not like this." His eyelids fluttered. A groan escaped his lips. Her hands worked fast, steady. She pulled a support rod from the tent frame, snapped it into a makeshift clamp, sterilized it with alcohol in one swift motion, and secured the artery as if she had done it 1,000 times before. The bleeding slowed. Novak's pulse, faint a moment ago, began to steady. In less than 4 minutes, she had him stabilized, sutures closing the wound in neat, practiced knots that even a seasoned trauma surgeon would envy. When she stepped back, the tent was utterly still. The rotors of the evacuation chopper roared outside, blades chopping the air, but inside, only silence reigned. Every eye was on her. Corporal Fletcher's mouth hung open. Sergeant Garrison stood frozen, his bravado replaced with something dangerously close to fear. Hayes' hands still shook, empty clamps dangling from his grasp. Sophia, calm as ever, peeled off her blood-stained gloves, washed her hands with methodical care, and spoke in that same musical voice. "YouTube tutorials," she said softly. "They're incredible these days." A lie so thin it almost felt like mockery. The whispers began immediately. "Did you see that? That wasn't training. That was—" Who is she? Nora Reeves, who had been watching Sophia from the start, studied her with narrowed eyes. There was no doubt in her mind now. Those movements, that confidence, that speed. That wasn't basic first aid, Nora murmured to herself. That was advanced trauma surgery. Hayes, desperate to cling to his authority, stammered. She broke protocol. Improvised tools aren't. But his protest sounded hollow, even to his own ears. The truth was undeniable. Hayes had panicked. Sophia had saved a life. And everyone knew it. As the medics rushed Novak to the waiting helicopter, his hand shot out and caught Sophia's wrist. His eyes, though heavy with pain and morphine, locked onto hers. "You're not just a medic, are you?" His voice was weak, barely audible over the roar of the blades. Sophia leaned close, her curls brushing his cheek. Her voice was a whisper only he could hear. "Sometimes," she said gently, "the most dangerous weapons look like flowers." And then she let go. That night, the base felt different. No one said it out loud, but the soldiers' eyes lingered on her now. Less mocking, more uncertain. They still muttered Goldilocks under their breath, but the word carried less sting, less laughter. Fletcher kept sneaking glances. Morales avoided her entirely. Hayes stayed quiet, sulking. And Garrison watched her with the unsettled stare of a man who had mocked someone far above his pay grade. But Nora Reeves? She was the only one who saw clearly. Later, as Sophia recited inventory numbers with military cadence, 27 bandages, 43 injectors, 16 kits, Nora stepped closer. "You count like a soldier," she said quietly, "not a civilian." Sophia's hands paused, just for a fraction of a second. Then she smiled, a soft, almost innocent smile. "Efficiency is efficiency," she replied, resuming her work. "When lives depend on numbers, you learn to be precise." It was a deflection, smooth. But Nora wasn't fooled. That evening, when most of the base settled down, Sophia slipped away. No one noticed, except Nora. Inside the communications tent, Sophia pulled a slim, encrypted device from her cargo pocket. Not the cheap, outdated phones most contractors carried. No, this was something else. Something meant for intelligence operatives, not medics. Her voice, still soft, still melodic, flowed into the microphone. But her words, clipped, coded, precise, did not belong to any civilian. Patient stable. Returning to baseline protocols. Cover intact. Awaiting further instruction. The reply crackled through encrypted static. Acknowledged, Nightingale. Maintain position. Storm clouds gathering. She slipped the device away, her face serene, and walked back to the medical tent as if she'd been gone only seconds. To the soldiers, she was still Goldilocks. But the truth was already unraveling. And when the red alert sirens screamed the next morning, announcing a coordinated enemy assault from 3 sides, the base would finally learn who Sophia Moretti really was. But by then, it might already be too late. Have you ever seen someone reveal a side of themselves you never imagined? Maybe in a crisis, maybe in a moment of truth? How did it change the way you looked at them? At 6:30, the siren screamed. They carved through the morning like a blade. Men grabbed rifles. Boots thundered on plywood. Radios crackled. The desert wind carried the smell of dust and diesel and something electric, like a storm charging the air. Non-essential to bunkers now, shouted Lieutenant Emma Walsh from the doorway of the medical tent, sweat beading at her hairline despite the cool hour. "This is not a drill. 3 flanks moving in." Sergeant John Garrison shouldered through behind her, voice pitched too loud, too thin. "You heard the LT. Princess," he jabbed a finger at Sophia. "Bunker. Real soldiers have work to do." Sophia looked up from a crate of gauze. Quiet. Steady. "Of course, Sergeant," she said, the corners of her mouth curving with a calm no one else felt. The tent shook with distant thumps. Sand sifted from seams in the canvas. Somewhere, a machine gun coughed to life and didn't stop. Sophia pivoted. Not toward the bunker. Toward the back wall. Nora Reeves saw it first, the shift. The glide that wasn't a glide anymore. Not graceful. Calculated. Sophia knelt beside a waist-high crate labeled saline. Her fingers traced the screwed-down lid. Found 2 hidden anchors. Twisted them the wrong way. The false bottom lifted with a sigh. Nora's breath caught. Inside, a compact sidearm in foam. Night optics. A foldable precision rifle with a suppressor. Surgical tools in satin rolls. A matte black radio with a worn push-to-talk. And dog tags. Sophia hooked the tags with one finger. The chain whispered against her knuckles. Moretti, S. Delta, Combat Medic. SAD classified. She straightened. In one motion, her blonde hair coiled back and vanished beneath a band, her posture climbing from civilian to field command. The oversized scrubs came away to reveal lean tactical webbing, plates, tourniquets, magazines. Boots that finally looked like they belonged to her feet. Outside, the base went from alarm to impact. A mortar whistled. Sophia's eyes ticked up. Down, she said, almost conversational. The round hit somewhere near the motor pool. A gust slapped the tent, snapping the canvas and rolling dust under the cots. Someone cursed. Someone prayed. For one heartbeat, even the sirens seemed to hold still. Sophia fitted the rifle together by feel. Metal kissed metal. The suppressor spun home. Her hands did not shake. She slid the radio from its nest and keyed it, voice low, music without warmth. Nightingale to Blackbird actual. Package recovered. Storm protocol green. Static. Then a voice, clipped and distant. Blackbird actual. Acknowledged Nightingale. Cover lifted. Full spectrum authorized. Weather intensifying. Sophia clicked off. She looked at Nora. For a second, 2 women stood in a corridor of noise, seeing each other clearly. You moved heaven inside a tent yesterday, Nora said. Not a question. We'll talk after, Sophia replied. If there's an after. Garrison shoved past a medic, eyes on the ridge through the flap. He finally turned and saw the rifle. What the, who issued you? His voice died. Sophia didn't answer. She ghosted through the door and sank behind a line of cinder blocks outside, rifle already kissing her cheek, stock molded to a memory older than this war. Wind from the west. Mirage dancing above the rocks. For glints on the high line where the mountain's shadow met the sky, glass. Scopes. Overwatch. She exhaled, long and patient. Click. Crack. A figure on the ridge folded, neat as a note. She had already shifted. Crack. The spotter pitched backward, his hand still pointing at the base. Crack. A muzzle flash died mid-spark behind a boulder. Crack. The last silhouette slumped forward, rifle skittering down shale in a brittle clatter. 8 seconds. For bodies. Silence, threading through chaos like a silver wire. Whoever's on counter-sniper, keep it up. Walsh barked over the net, voice ragged with adrenaline. You're buying us a minute. Sophia keyed her black radio, not the base comms. Blackbird for Overwatch neutralized. Northern crest clear. Shifting east. She didn't wait for the reply. She was already moving, low and quick, hugging HESCO barriers, sliding past a Humvee punched with holes the size of thumbs. Bullets hissed. Sand jumped. Someone yelled for ammo. Someone yelled for a mother. Garrison stared after her, jaw unhinged. Fletcher's whispers scraped out of him like a secret trying to become a prayer. Holy she's. Eyes up, Nora snapped, dragging a stretcher toward a voice calling medic from a line. Sophia slid into a slump of torn camo and bright blood. Private Morrison lay half-propped against the barrier, both hands clamped to his thigh. Arterial rhythm, hard, fast wasting. His breath came in rapid bursts. It's bad. It's bad. It's fixable. Her tone cut through the noise, gentle as cool water. She peeled his hands away and pressed at exactly the right angle, the world narrowing to pressure and pulse. Tourniquet high. Rod turned. Lock. Bleeding blue to ooze. His eyes fluttered. Look at me, she said. Name. Morrison, Evan. Morrison, Evan, stay with me. Think of something stupid you'll brag about later. Go. He blinked. I once lied about a bench press. Perfect, she said. Lie bigger. His mouth twitched. So did hers. A fresh crack of mortar. Closer this time. The ground swelled. Dust hammered down. She didn't flinch. She moved. Fletcher, she called, voice soft but cutting. He jolted like he'd been slapped. Hand me that seal. No, vented. The one with the hinge. Why, yeah, he stammered, fumbling, eyes round as coins. 10 meters away, Corpsman Willis, older than most, tough as cable, pressed a blood-slick hand to his chest, breaths darting and high. Sucking wound. The kind that steals seconds. Sophia was at his side in 3 strides. Hi, Willis, she said, kneeling. Bad day. Let's make it worse before it gets better. He barked a painful laugh that ended in a wheeze. She was already stripping, sealing, rolling him to burp the trapped air. The seal fluttered as the lung reinflated. She listened with her palm like the body was an instrument, and she knew the song. Better, she whispered. Stay small. Stay smart. He nodded, teeth gritted. You're not just a medic. Labels later, she said. Breathing now. Behind them, Hayes skidded into view, eyes blown wide. He opened his mouth, some sputter about protocol on the edge of it, and saw what she'd done. His words collapsed in his throat. He grabbed in 4 instead, and for once, worked in silence. Round stitched the sandbags over their heads, spilling grit like hourglass sand. A tracer licked by, close enough to sketch a red line across Sophia's vision. She felt heat on her cheek and nothing in her hands but the work. Clamp, she said, and Nora was there, already holding it out. 2 beats, 3, and the bleeding abated. Sophia nodded small thanks. Nora nodded back. A language older than rank. LT Walsh to all stations. The radio in Nora's vest barked. Eastern sector pushing. They're testing the wire at E2. Sophia's head snapped toward the far berm. She knew the angle, knew the lane, knew where men would crawl to die, and where they would lie to kill. Nora, she said, you've got Morrison and Willis. What about you? East, Sophia answered, already running. They're blind there. For now. She cut behind a shipping container breathing heat, hurdled a tangle of comms cable, and slid into a shallow pit with sightlines on a thin stand of juniper beyond the fence. Shapes moved in the mirage, patient, low, smart. Not a rush. A thread drawing tight. She settled the rifle. The world quieted. Not the battlefield. That would never hush. But the part of her that heard more than fear. 1 target. 2. A third where no one else would look. She exhaled. The trigger broke like glass. Crack. 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 3 men went home to no one. A voice she didn't recognize broke the base net. Strained and grateful. East line, you're clear. God bless whoever you are. Garrison had made it to the corner of the tent, white-knuckled. Radio pressed to his ear like a life ring. He saw Sophia's profile in the pit, the curls tamed, the black eyes on another world's horizon. The dog tags winked once, catching a ray of harsh sun. What are you? He breathed. Not into a radio. Into the day. She heard him anyway. A medic, she said. And at the last syllable, a new thunder rolled across the base. Heads turned. Even the guns seemed to hesitate. An aircraft swept over the southern ridge, low, fast, unmarked. No numbers on the tail. No unit paint. The sound hit first, a turbine growl that went straight through bone. Nora squinted up. We expecting a bird? Not on my schedule, Walsh said, hand clamped to her headset. The uncertainty in her voice turned everyone's blood colder. Sophia's radio murmured, just for her. Nightingale, your sky is arriving. T9. She stared at the black shape circling for approach, then at the men and women scattered like punctuation across the base. Their breaths, their fear, their lives. Her jaw set. She keyed the mic, Blackbird. I still have patience. I still have a perimeter. Copy, Nightingale. Perimeter won't hold without you for long. Decision window closing. Wind whipped the tent flaps. The desert tasted like metal. Sophia looked to Nora. to Morrison, to Willis, to Garrison, who couldn't meet her eyes, to Novak's empty cot in the corner of the tent, sheets still creased from a medevac. She shouldered the rifle. Then we make the next 9 minutes count. She slid from the pit, every step a promise. The unmarked bird banked. The enemy, sensing the shift, poured another line of fire across the eastern dust. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Even the sirens seemed to inhale. Sophia raised the rifle, and the sky came lower. When pressure hits and seconds matter, do you retreat to safety or step toward the fire because someone else needs you to? Where does that instinct come from in you? The unmarked Blackhawk roared overhead, its blades chopping the desert air into violent gusts that ripped through the base. Dust swirled in golden storms, stinging eyes, grinding into teeth. Soldiers ducked their heads, clutching rifles and helmets, shouting orders that vanished under the thunder. But Sophia didn't flinch. She stood in the open, rifle slung across her chest, curls whipping free of her band. Her black eyes locked on the descending bird as if it were a messenger from another world. The landing zone cleared, men dragging stretchers and crates out of the blast radius. The helicopter kissed the earth hard, throwing up a wall of sand. The side door slid open before the skids even settled. A figure stepped down, tall, silver hair pulled tight, a uniform with no insignia except a cluster of ribbons on her chest, their colors glinting like shards of history. Her bearing said it all. This was no contractor, no desk officer. This was command, the kind that didn't ask permission. Commander Rebecca Ashworth. She strode straight toward Captain Walsh, her voice slicing through the chaos with effortless authority. I'm here for Specialist Moretti. Operational security is compromised. Her mission is concluded. Extraction is priority. Walsh blinked, confusion etched across her dust-streaked face. Ma'am, we don't have a Specialist Moretti. Only a civilian medic under contract. Ashworth's gaze cut her off. Cold, unyielding. You have Delta Force Combat Medic Sophia Moretti, Special Activities Division. Classified clearance. 3 tours. Silver Star. Purple Heart. 52 lives saved under fire. The words hit like shockwaves. Around them, soldiers stilled. Sergeant Garrison froze mid-order, his radio slack in his hand. Fletcher's laugh, meant for some crude joke, died in his throat. Hayes's mouth opened, then closed again, like a fish gasping on sand. Goldilocks. Princess. Doll. They'd mocked a legend. Sophia approached, rifle at her side, her movements stripped of all softness now. The mask of fragility was gone. What stood before them was the truth, a soldier honed by fire, sharper than any of them had imagined. Her boots hit the dirt with purpose. Her shoulders squared. Her black eyes scanned, cataloging. Always cataloging. Ashworth saluted. Formal. Crisp. Respectful. Outstanding work under adverse conditions, Specialist, she said, voice carrying. Your report will read like a battlefield manual. The extraction team is prepared. Sophia returned the salute. Smooth. No hesitation. The tent behind them, however, buzzed with whispers. Delta. She's Delta. No way. No way that's real. But it was. Garrison's voice cracked as he found words. Ma'am, with respect, she's been cleaning stretchers, organizing bandages. Ashworth cut him down with a glance that could burn steel. She's been observing, cataloging weaknesses, identifying gaps in training, supply, morale. She's been saving your lives before you knew you were losing them. Her tone shifted, a razor turned to flesh. And while she did it, Sergeant, you mocked her. You ridiculed her. You endangered morale under your command. Consider your career concluded. Garrison swallowed. His hands shook. For the first time, the swagger drained completely, leaving only a pale young man in a uniform too big for him. Fletcher and Morales looked down at their boots. Hayes pressed a trembling hand against the medical crate, his authority crumbling like paper in rain. But Sophia wasn't listening to the politics. She was kneeling beside Morrison, who lay pale and trembling on a stretcher, leg bound tight. Her voice softened again, warm now, familiar. "You're stable," she told him, squeezing his shoulder. "You'll see home again." His lips parted. You saved me. Twice." She smiled faintly. "Then I expect you to buy me 2 coffees when we're back." Nearby, Willis lifted a bloodied hand in salute. Sophia clasped it, her grip strong. "You're tougher than you think, Willis. Don't forget that when the scars itch." The wounded clung to her presence. Soldiers who had laughed at her yesterday now looked at her like she was carved for myth. Ashworth gestured toward the Blackhawk. "Specialist. Wheels up in 5. The longer we linger, the more this base stays a target." Sophia's eyes swept the compound one last time. The scarred walls, the battered sandbags, the young faces staring at her with awe, guilt, or both. Her gaze found Novak's empty cot, sheets still creased from his evacuation. A flicker of softness crossed her features, almost like grief, almost like pride. She turned back to Ashworth. "Understood, ma'am." Her rifle slung, her pack minimal, she walked with calm steps toward the bird. As she boarded, Ashworth's voice rang out once more, loud enough for every soldier to hear. "Remember this. Strength doesn't always come in the form you expect. The quiet ones, the underestimated ones, sometimes they are the storm." The rotors roared. The dust rose. Sophia Moretti climbed aboard without looking back. And in her absence, the base suddenly felt smaller, emptier, yet forever changed. Garrison would face formal reprimand, his career cut short. Fletcher and Morales would find themselves transferred far from command lines. Hayes's authority evaporated, his title meaningless compared to Sophia's lived skill. But Nora Reeves, she alone walked away vindicated. She had seen through the veil, trusted her instincts. And though she'd never say it aloud, a part of her would always measure herself against Sophia's quiet, lethal grace. The helicopter rose, shrinking against the desert sun. And as it vanished into the horizon, the question hung heavy in every soldier's chest. Had they just witnessed the departure of a guardian, or the retreat of something far more dangerous, summoned only when storms demanded it? Have you ever realized too late that you were standing beside someone extraordinary? How did it change the way you thought about them, or yourself? The desert was quieter now. The smoke had thinned, drifting away on the dry wind that whispered across the ridges. The sirens had stopped. The gunfire had fallen silent. Only the low groan of engines and the distant rumble of artillery fire echoed across the barren hills, reminders that war never truly ended. It only shifted. But inside forward operating base Ember, the silence felt heavier than any battle. Because Sophia Moretti was gone, the soldiers moved about their duties, patching barricades, gathering shell casings, restocking ammo crates. But their eyes betrayed them. Every time someone passed the medical tent, they paused, if only for a second. Every time a supply crate was opened, their gaze flickered, as if expecting to see a false bottom, a hidden weapon, a secret. Her absence was a presence in itself. Private Ethan Novak, recovering in the infirmary, stirred awake each morning expecting to see the delicate figure who had saved him twice. But the cot beside him was empty. The blonde curls, the soft voice counting supplies, the quiet footsteps, gone. And though he never said it aloud, he felt the weight of her words. Sometimes the most dangerous weapons look like flowers. Sergeant Garrison stood in the command tent, sweat prickling at his collar as Captain Walsh read the report aloud. Failure to recognize qualified personnel. Failure to maintain unit cohesion. Harassment of a decorated operator. Each word was a nail sealing his fate. Once, he'd strutted around the base like he owned it. Now, he couldn't meet anyone's eyes. His soldiers no longer followed his lead. Respect had bled out of him faster than Novak's artery had on that stretcher. Corporal Fletcher and Private Morales had been marked too. Transfer orders came swiftly, sending them to quieter posts where their shadows would be small. They joked less now. Their laughter, once sharp and cruel, had dulled into silence. Hayes avoided the med tent entirely. His loud voice was gone, his medical authority reduced to mutters. He had seen his degrees crumble in the face of Sophia's battlefield precision. Every syringe he touched now seemed heavier, as if mocking him. But Nora Reeves, she walked differently now. She had always been competent, respected, steady. But after Sophia's revelation, something in her had sharpened. She saw the base with new eyes. Weak points in defenses, gaps in training, cracks in morale. Sophia hadn't just saved lives. She had exposed truths. And Reeves carried those truths like a torch. She drilled the medics harder, taught them battlefield improvisation Sophia had demonstrated. She cataloged supplies with Sophia's cadence, her voice steady, efficient. 27 bandages, 43 injectors, 16 kits. Others noticed. They followed her lead. The tent became sharper, faster, calmer under fire. Reeves never admitted aloud, but she felt it. She was living in Sophia's shadow. And maybe, just maybe, that shadow made her stronger. 2 weeks later, a small, unmarked package arrived on Walsh's desk. No return address. No markings except a black feather drawn in careful ink. Inside, a folded note and a single military dog tag. The note was short, handwritten, elegant. Storms pass, but they always return. Train them well, Captain. Some battles aren't fought with rifles, but with the courage to see what others overlook. S. Walsh read it 3 times before slipping it into her jacket. She didn't tell Garrison. She didn't tell Hayes. But she did gather her officers that night and repeat the words as if they were her own. Around campfires and inside mess tents, Sophia's story became a legend. Some said she was CIA. Others whispered she was Delta. A few swore she was something even deeper, a ghost unit that didn't exist on paper, only in whispers. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was that they had seen her. The quiet girl who scrubbed stretchers had become the storm. And every time new recruits laughed at the thought of a medic saving lives under fire, veterans of Ember would lean in, voices low, and say, "You weren't there when Goldilocks picked up the rifle." From his cot, Novak stared at the ceiling at night. His legs still bore the scars, but it wasn't the pain that kept him awake. It was the memory of her hand gripping his, her voice steady, her eyes so impossibly calm. "You're not really just a medic, are you?" he had asked. He knew the answer now, and with that knowledge came a vow. To train harder, to see deeper, to never dismiss the quiet ones again. Because if Sophia Moretti had taught him anything, it was this. Strength often hides in silence. The desert night wrapped the base in darkness. Stars burned cold above. Somewhere out there, Sophia moved across another battlefield, her presence unseen, her rifle silent, her hands ready to heal or to kill. And though the soldiers of Ember would never see her again, they knew one thing with certainty. She had changed them, forever. Have you ever met someone who left without explanation, but their presence stayed with you, shaping the way you see the world? Who was that person for you?